The air inside the dojo was heavy, not from sweat or heat, but from the quiet pressure of eyes fixed on her. The woman stood in the center, her back straight, her fists clenched at her sides. She wore a simple red shirt, not the white GI that the others wore. Around her, the students shifted, whispering among themselves. They thought she did not belong there, that she was only a guest, or worse, a mistake. The black belt master chuckled as he stepped forward. His voice carried easily across the polished floor. "Go clean. That's all you do," he said, smiling as if he had delivered a joke. His finger pointed at her chest, and laughter rippled behind him. The men in white uniforms stood taller, enjoying the moment. The few women in the back avoided her eyes, afraid of being caught in the mockery. But she did not flinch, not even once. She had walked into the dojo with quiet steps, but her silence was not weakness. It was focus. She had not come here to clean, nor to bow, nor to wait at the edges of the mat. She had come because challenge had called her. And now, challenge stood before her in the form of a man with a black belt and a smile that did not hide his arrogance. The students expected her to shrink back. They thought she would lower her eyes and retreat to the corner, but she did not move. Instead, her lips curved slightly, almost a smile but sharper. She raised her hands slowly, palms open, ready for combat. The room stilled. The whispers stopped. The master's grin faded, his eyes narrowing as if he was unsure whether this was a joke or an insult. She tilted her head slightly, daring him to strike first. The moment hung like a blade above the crowd. The air tightened. Her breath was steady, slow, deep. She had trained in silence, away from eyes that doubted her. She had mastered forms in shadows where no one believed she could stand in the light. And now the light was here, burning, pressing, forcing her to show what she had always hidden. She could hear her own heart, calm and strong. She could hear his breath too, shallow and uneasy. Already, the balance had shifted. He lunged forward, quick as lightning, his fist cutting through the air toward her shoulder. The crowd leaned in, expecting her to stumble. But her body twisted like water flowing around stone. His fist found nothing but air. Her hand snapped up, catching his wrist, twisting it with precision. His eyes widened. The laughter died, replaced with gasps that struck the walls of the dojo. He pulled back, breaking free, but not before pain flashed across his face. Real and sharp, she stepped back, her stance firm, her eyes never leaving his. He rushed again, this time with a kick meant to sweep her legs, but she moved too fast. Her foot shot forward, tapping his ankle, and his balance shifted against him. He staggered, his black belt trembling around his waist. The students froze, their mouths open, as their master stumbled before the woman they had mocked only moments ago. The silence grew heavier. It pressed against the ceiling, against the hearts of everyone in the room. Even the flags on the wall seemed to still, as if the air itself waited for the next move. Her eyes never wavered. She had not come to humiliate. She had not come to joke. She had come to show the truth, and the truth was sharp, undeniable, and merciless. The black belt steadied himself, his face red now, not with shame but with anger. His pride was cut, and he would not let it bleed before his students. He raised both fists, his knuckles white, his teeth clenched. But she only straightened her shoulders, drawing in a long breath. Her body was ready, her mind sharper than steel. She whispered one word, low and firm, but the silence carried it to every ear. Again. And with that, the war inside the dojo truly began. The dojo floor shook under the sound of their movements. Every student leaned forward, eyes locked on the clash that no one had expected. The woman stood calm, her breath steady, her muscles loose but ready. Across from her, the black belt crouched lower, his pride wounded, his anger blazing. He had never been embarrassed in front of his students before. He would not allow it to continue. His fists curled tighter, and the room grew colder under his stare. He launched forward, faster this time, his palm cutting through the air toward her chest. She pivoted, her hand brushing his arm aside with grace. Her elbow snapped upward, missing his chin by less than an inch. She had chosen not to strike fully, and that choice was louder than any punch. Gasps broke out from the students. They saw what she could have done, and they understood. She was not only fast, she was in control. He growled, frustration leaking through his smile. He circled her, his bare feet sliding across the mat. She mirrored his steps, her eyes never leaving his. For a moment, the dojo was quiet except for the soft scrape of movement and the sound of two hearts beating in different rhythms. His was rapid, frantic, beating to prove himself. Hers was calm, measured, steady like a drum leading soldiers into battle. Then he attacked again, a sharp strike aimed for her shoulder, followed by a low kick. She blocked the first with a turn of her wrist and answered the second with a swift pivot. Her leg shot forward like lightning, connecting lightly with his thigh. It was not enough to injure, but enough to make him stumble back. His balance betrayed him again, and his students shifted nervously. Some whispered to each other, their voices thin with disbelief. Their master was losing ground. The woman lowered her stance, her face calm, her chest rising with slow breaths. She had fought greater battles than this, though none of these men knew it. She had faced doubt from the moment she stepped into any room. She had faced laughter, silence, and disbelief. But what she had faced most often was the word no. No, you cannot. No, you should not. No, you will fail. Every no had been another strike against her spirit. And yet here she stood, stronger than all of them. The black belt roared this time, a sound more animal than human. His pride was burning away his focus, and his movements grew wild. He swung high, then low, then fast with both hands. But her body bent, turned, twisted with precision. She was water, and he was fire. His fists met only air, and the more he missed, the hotter his anger grew. Finally she stepped in close, too close for his fists. Her hand clamped around his arm, and her foot pressed against his chest. With a push, she sent him back across the mat. He landed hard, and the sound echoed through the room like a drum of defeat. The students stood frozen. Their eyes darted between the fallen black belt and the woman who had not even broken a sweat. No one laughed now. No one whispered. The silence pressed heavy on their chests. Even the walls seemed to lean in, waiting for what would happen next. She did not move forward to boast. She did not raise her hands in victory. She simply stood tall, her presence filling the space that had once been theirs. The black belt rose slowly, his face red not only from the fall but from the humiliation. His teeth ground together, his breath sharp. He stared at her as if she had stolen something from him. Perhaps she had. She had stolen the image of power he had built before his students. She had stolen the laughter he once used to control them. She had stolen his pride, piece by piece, and she had done it with calm silence. But still he would not yield. Again. He growled, his voice hoarse, his fists rising once more. He would fight until his body broke, because surrender was worse than pain. The students held their breath. They could see his struggle, but they could also see the truth. The truth stood before them in red and black, unshaken, unafraid. She looked at him, her eyes steady, her voice quiet but cutting through the silence with ease. As many times as you want. The crowd shivered. They could hear the war inside those words, a war greater than the one fought with fists and kicks. It was the war of dignity against arrogance, of respect against mockery. It was the war that none of them had seen coming. Yet now none could look away from. And as he charged again, his fury boiling, she did not step back. She stepped forward, ready to meet him head-on, the fire in his chest colliding with the storm in hers. And in that clash, the dojo felt less like a room and more like a battlefield where legends were born. The master charged again, his steps heavy, his arms swinging with desperate strength. The students expected his power to crush her, but she slipped aside, letting his force rush past her. Her hand touched his shoulder, guiding his momentum forward. He stumbled once more, catching himself against the mat. His teeth clenched, his breath loud. Every mistake was eating at his pride, and every mistake made the silence of the room louder. She did not rush him. She did not even raise her voice. She stood still, her eyes fixed on him as if she could see beyond his anger. He struck again, but his strikes had lost their sharpness. They were wild, heavy, and loud, while hers were silent, precise, and controlled. She deflected each blow with simple movements, as if she had known the shape of his attack before he even thought of it. And slowly, the students began to see what their master refused to accept. She was not weaker. She was not slower. She was not less, she was more. Every move she made was clean and sharp. Every step she took was steady. Her silence spoke louder than his roars. The whispers that had once mocked her had turned into awe. The jinn that had once laughed at her now held its breath with every motion. She was changing the air around them, bending it with her will. Finally, she struck. A simple move, quick and controlled. Her fist stopped an inch from his chest, but the impact of her control hit harder than any punch. The black belt froze, staring down at the fist that could have ended the fight. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Sweat clung to his skin. He stepped back, shaken, realizing she had chosen not to break him. The silence in the dojo was complete now, no voice daring to break the moment. But pride is not so easily silenced. He roared once more, his fists trembling as he raised them high. He charged like a storm, fists and feet flying without rhythm. She moved into him, her body weaving through the chaos. Her hand snapped forward, striking his wrist, bending it back. Pain cracked across his face as he dropped his arm. She turned, her foot sweeping the ground, and he collapsed onto his knees. For the first time, the black belt master knelt before her. Gasps erupted. The students stared, their eyes wide. Their master, the man they had followed for years, was on the ground. The woman in red stood above him, her chest steady, her hands still calm. She had not raised her voice, had not shouted for respect, had not begged for a chance. She had taken it with her strength, and no one could deny it now. The black belt lifted his head slowly. His eyes burned with shame, with anger, with the weight of defeat. His lips pressed together, trembling with words he could not speak. He pushed himself up, forcing his body to stand. But when he looked around, he saw his students' eyes. They were not mocking her anymore. They were not laughing at him anymore. They were staring at her with something he had once commanded respect. She saw it too, but she did not gloat. Her expression remained calm, her eyes steady. She stepped back, giving him space to rise. It was not mercy born of pity. It was strength born of certainty. She knew who she was. She knew what she had shown. The fight was not about winning or losing. It was about truth. And the truth was standing tall before them. The black belt clenched. His fists once more, but his arms shook. His pride demanded he continue, but his body warned him he would fall again. He stood frozen between choice and defeat, torn by the eyes of his students. He had built himself as unbreakable, but she had cracked the mask. Now every eye in the dojo saw it. They saw her strength, and they saw his weakness. The woman's voice cut the silence, low but sharp. You asked for a fight. This is the fight. Do you still want it? The question was not loud, but it was heavy. It pressed against the walls, against the hearts of every student. The master lowered his eyes, if only for a second. And that second was all it took for the students to understand. The man they had once followed had been broken. The woman they had mocked had risen above him. The war in the dojo was no longer just between two fighters. It had become a war of truth against pride. And pride, for the first time, was losing. The black belt's chest rose and fell like a drum. BEATEN too fast. His eyes darted around the room, searching for the strength he had always found in the faces of his students. But the faces were no longer his. The young men who once laughed at his jokes now stared at him with doubt. Some stood stiff, others shifted uneasily. None of them smiled. Their silence was louder than their laughter had ever been. The woman took a step back, not because she feared him, but because she respected the mat. Her eyes held steady, calm and strong. She gave him space to rise once more, as if she still believed he could fight with honor. That gesture alone struck deeper than any blow. It was not pity. It was respect given to a man who had not earned it tonight, and the students saw it. They saw that she carried dignity where their master carried only pride. He rushed again, his fists flying, his body shaking with rage. She bent and turned with grace, her body flowing like wind through a storm. Each strike he threw was answered with silence. Each kick was met with a shift of her stance. And when the moment came, she struck his chest with her palm, not to break him, but to stop him. He staggered back, coughing, his balance slipping once more. The sound of his weakness filled the room, and every student felt it. A whisper rose. In the back, soft but sharp, "She's stronger than him." Another voice followed. "She's faster." The whispers spread like fire through dry grass. The black belt heard them. His ears burned as if the words were knives. He turned his glare on his students, but even his stare no longer silenced them. Their eyes had shifted. They were no longer looking at him as their leader. They were looking at her. The woman's expression did not change. She kept her focus on him, not on the whispers. She knew that respect earned from others was never the goal. Respect had to be carried inside, through every choice, every breath, every strike. But still, she could feel the room changing. The air was no longer filled with doubt. It was filled with something closer to awe. She had not come for their approval, yet it was rising around her like a tide. The black belt screamed this time, his roar echoing off the walls. He charged again, his hands reaching for her. But his movements were sloppy now, broken by frustration. She sidestepped and caught his arm, twisting it behind his back. His body bent forward, forced down, his knees shaking against the mat. His students gasped as their master was held in place. Trapped by the strength of the woman they had mocked, she released him. Not because she could not end it, but because she chose not to. He fell to his knees, gasping, his arms trembling. The silence was heavy again, pressing down on every chest. No one moved, no one spoke. The only sound was his breath, uneven and harsh. And then, slowly, a sound broke through. A clap, one pair of hands clapping softly from the back of the room. The others turned. Another student began to clap, then another, and another. The sound grew, filling the dojo with sharp echoes. They were not clapping for the black belt. They were clapping for her. The woman stood still, her chest rising with steady breaths. Her eyes calm. She had not asked for this. She had not demanded it. Yet here it was, respect given freely, stronger than any belt could grant. The black belt's face twisted with fury and shame. He rose, his fist still trembling. "Enough!" he shouted, his voice cracking. The clapping died, but the silence did not return to him. It returned to her. The room was hers now. The air was hers. The eyes were hers. He was standing in his own dojo, but it no longer belonged to him. He pointed at her, his hand shaking. "This isn't finished," he spat. But even as he said it, his students' eyes betrayed him. They no longer believed him. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. The truth was simple. The woman in red was stronger. The woman in red was faster. The woman in red had dignity. And their black belt, The man they once thought untouchable was only human. The woman stepped forward, her shadow falling across him. Her voice was calm, but it cut deeper than any blade. You wanted a fight, you got one. But respect is not won by mocking others. Respect is earned. Her words lingered in the air, heavy and undeniable. The students bowed their heads, some in shame, some in admiration. The black belt stood frozen, caught between anger and defeat. He could not answer her, not with fists, not with words. And in that silence, the dojo itself seemed to bow. For the first time, the black belt knew what it felt like to stand in the presence of someone greater than himself. The dojo was silent, but it was not his silence anymore. The black belt stood shaking, his fists raised half-heartedly. His chest heaved as sweat rolled down his face. The power that once made the room obey him was gone. His students were no longer waiting for his commands. They were waiting for hers. That truth cut deeper than any strike. His pride was breaking, piece by piece, under the weight of her calm presence. The woman did not rush him. She did not mock him. She only stood steady, her eyes fixed on him with quiet strength. The silence stretched until even his own breath sounded loud in his ears. He tried to gather himself, to lift his shoulders high, but his arms trembled. His body betrayed the weakness his pride tried to hide. She saw it. They all saw it. He lunged again, his last attempt to reclaim what he had lost. His strike was wild, his step unsteady. She moved with ease, slipping aside, her hand snapping forward. She pressed her palm against his chest and pushed. He stumbled back, landing hard on the mat. This time he did not rise quickly. He stayed down, gasping, his hands gripping the floor. The students stared, their disbelief turning into a truth they could not deny. Their master was beaten. The woman stepped closer, but she did not strike again. She stood above him, her voice low and firm. Respect is not given to the loudest. It is given to the one who earns it. Her words carried across the room, striking harder than her hands. The students shifted, their eyes moving between her and the man they once followed. Their faces no longer carried doubt, they carried choice. And that choice was not his anymore. The black belt slammed his fist against the mat. "No," he roared, his voice breaking. "I am the master here. I am the black belt. You will not take this from me." His words echoed, but they rang hollow. No one answered. Not a single student moved to his side. Their silence was his answer, and it crushed him more than any blow. He looked at their faces, searching for loyalty, but found only eyes turned toward her. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She only held his gaze, her voice steady. "Your belt is not strength. Your pride is not honor. Today you showed them both." He trembled, his head lowering. His pride screamed inside him, telling him to rise again, to strike again, to never surrender. But his body ached, his chest burned, his spirit cracked. The students whispered again, but this time their whispers were not for him, they were for her. Respect, awe, admiration words he once commanded were slipping through his fingers like sand. He tried to rise, pushing himself up on shaking arms. But when he met her eyes, his strength drained away. She had not struck him down with fists. She had broken him with truth. His knees bent under him, and he sank once more to the mat. His chest heaved, his eyes dropped to the floor. The sight sent a shock through the students. Their master, the black belt they once feared, was kneeling before her. The moment stretched, long and heavy. No one spoke, no one moved. The dojo had changed in that single breath. Its order, its power, its truth had shifted. The woman stood calm, strong, unshaken. The man who once ruled it had fallen, not by force, but by the weight of his own pride. And now he was left with nothing but the choice to admit it. Her voice broke the silence once more. "Say it," she whispered. His head lifted slowly, his eyes burning with shame. "What?" he croaked. "Say it," she repeated. "Not to me, to them. Say what they already know." His lips trembled. He looked at his students, their eyes wide, their hearts pounding. He saw the truth written in their stares. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. His pride fought to hold the words back, but the weight pressed harder. Finally, his voice cracked through the silence. "She is stronger than me." Gasps broke across the room. Some students stepped forward, others covered their mouths. The words, once unthinkable, had been spoken. The black belt had admitted it, not by choice, but because truth had forced him. He dropped his head again, his fists clenching against the mat. The students turned their eyes back to her. And in that moment, the respect they had once given their master shifted entirely to her. The dojo did not belong to him anymore. It belonged to the woman who had walked in with silence, stood with strength, and left them with truth. The black belt stayed on his knees, his breath heavy, his hands trembling against the mat. His students had never seen him like this. To them, he was always unshakable, always stronger, always above. But tonight the image was shattered. The truth stood clear before them. Their master had been broken, not by a louder man, not by a stronger belt, but by a woman they had laughed at only hours ago. The woman looked down at him. She could have humiliated him further. She could have pressed the victory into his wounds, but she did not. She stood tall, her chest steady, her silence louder than his cries. Her strength was not in defeating him. Her strength was in showing everyone what he had tried to hide. She did not need to prove herself anymore. The room itself had already spoken. The students began to shift, one by one. Their feet scraped the mat as they straightened, their heads lowering. Slowly, they bowed not to the black belt, but to her. It started in the back, a quiet show of respect. Then it spread, row by row, until the entire dojo had bent forward, their foreheads nearly touching the mat. The air was thick with reverence. It was not forced. It was not commanded. It was earned. The black belt lifted his head, his eyes widening as he saw his students bowing to her. His heart twisted, his pride shattered into pieces too small to gather. He had thought the belt gave him authority. He had thought laughter gave him power, but both had abandoned him. He was left with nothing but the sting of his own arrogance. And in that moment, he felt something he had never felt before: fear. The woman's voice broke the silence, calm yet powerful. Respect is not given because of rank. Respect is earned by what you do when no one believes in you. Her words rolled through the room like thunder, and no one dared to move. Every student felt the weight of her truth pressing into their chest. They knew now that the belt meant nothing without the spirit to carry it. The black belt tried to speak, but his throat was dry. He forced out words, rough and cracked. "I yield." The admission cut his pride like a blade, but it was the only path left. His knees bent deeper, his head lowering. He was no longer standing above anyone. He was kneeling, defeated, not just in body but in spirit. The students gasped, their disbelief shaking the walls. Their master had never yielded before, not until her. The woman nodded once, her eyes steady. She stepped back, giving him space, giving him dignity in defeat. That choice struck deeper than all her strikes. She had not destroyed him. She had given him the chance to rise again, if he chose it with humility. That mercy was something he had never offered others, and now it was offered to him. It was both gift and lesson. The students rose slowly, their eyes fixed on her. Some looked at their master, but their respect no longer returned to him. They had seen a new truth, and truth cannot be unseen. Their whispers had turned into silence, and their silence had turned into reverence. The dojo was different now. The power had shifted, and no laughter could change it back. The black belt sat still, his shoulders hunched, his pride bleeding away. He could not meet their eyes. He could not meet hers. All he could do was breathe and accept the weight of his own defeat. The woman, meanwhile, stood calm and tall. She did not need their bows. She did not need their words. She had proven herself, not by demand but by truth. And the truth would live in this dojo long after the fight ended. She turned toward the door, her steps slow but firm. Each footstep echoed through the room like a drumbeat, marking the end of the war. When she reached the edge of the mat, she paused. Without turning back, her voice filled the silence one last time. Remember this night. Respect is not a belt you wear. It is a life you live. Then she stepped out, leaving the dojo behind. The students stood frozen, their hearts pounding, their minds changed forever. And in the center of the mat, the black belt remained kneeling, his pride broken, his silence louder than any roar. The dojo would never be the same again. The woman, who was once laughed at, had not only defeated the black belt, she had rewritten the meaning of strength in the eyes of everyone who witnessed her.